Today, we're going to be diving in to some Bears news. Combine starting this week. We'll kind of get into a little bit of that. Just kicked off today, so we won't get too much into it. We got other Bears news as well. Ben Johnson was just on Part of My Take. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. We got our version today of Ryan Poles' top 5 worst draft picks. And then also we're getting to the UC chat once again. We'll talk about the Blackhawks games that happened in the last week, Bulls games that happened in the last week as well. Talk a little bit about their rosters and stuff like that. And then we'll get into some other Chicago sports news. So let's get kicked off for you guys. My name's Tyler. I'm joined alongside
Daniel. We are so pleased to be back here. I mean, the games are finally started, so no more All-Star games, no more Final Fours and stuff like that. So finally back on track to give you some detailed views on how the last Bulls Blackhawks games went, some updated Bears information like Tyler said. So let's get right into it, man. It's a pretty exciting week.
Yeah, let's get you kicked off right when our Bears discussion to get you guys started off today. So, Dan, you want to kick us off with a little bit of Bears news? Obviously, we got some unfortunate news today out of the Bears organization. Well, not out of, for the Bears, but this kind of regarding Bears free agency and stuff like that. Dan, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so there was a favorite signing member of the Chicago Bears that were supposed to be on the roster within the next month. We were all hoping for offensive guard Trey Smith, who was the number one, product on the radar for the Chicago Bears this offseason. He ended up getting franchise tagged by the Chiefs, which was, we guessed it, right? Like we kept seeing reports in the last week or so saying that the Chiefs were very, very against letting him go.
Exactly.
So they signed him to a franchise tag. So it's 1 year for $23 million. And this prevents Smith from hitting the open market and thus letting the Bears potentially sign him. So there's a few other names on the list, though, so we can definitely go over. It is unfortunate, but listen, a player getting franchise tagged has usually meant that they don't get signed the year after. It's really tough for a team to do that. I think the Chiefs are doing that because you can get an offensive guard like that for a 1 year rental. You might as well do it. So,
especially as important as a guy like Trey Smith for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's been a star on this roster the last few years. It was just this year they got named to the Pro Bowl and stuff like that. But that was the Bears' number one target. Everybody for the last, what are we talking about? Last 3 months, even before the Super Bowl and everything like that, Bears fans were talking about, Trey Smith, number one target. Obviously, you needed to bulk up that guard position with the Bears. And, Trey Smith getting franchise tagged by the Chiefs, 1 year deal for $23 million, like you said, $23.4 million. It was understandable the Chiefs were going to do it. It was one of the best players that they had to franchise tag on their team. Bears are just so they got two options right now. The Bears have either, hit the free agent market, like you just said, or trade for him with the franchise tag. I don't see option B, unfortunately, just because, it's a lot of value in Trey Smith, especially being on the franchise tag. That means you got a lot of value on your head. And that's why, Trey Smith is going to be franchise tagged by the Chiefs. They couldn't let him go. You can't let him walk. I think if the Chiefs would have let him walk, it would have been a stupid decision on their end. Obviously people are going to talk about, Super Bowl, that he didn't perform that well. That whole team didn't perform well in the Super Bowl, man, the whole Chiefs organization. So, now, with Trey Smith basically getting franchise tagged by the Chiefs, the Bears have to look elsewhere at the offensive guard position. And, flowing around, there's a lot of names on Twitter flowing around, the last hour or two. I was doing a lot of research with looking at what people are kind of looking at, which players. So let's talk about Bears targets with the, or not with the top 10 pick. It has the same things. Bears targets at the offensive guard position. So, Dan, you want to kick us off with some of these targets? Of
course. Man? So there's a few names here that we have mentioned, and I'll go backwards. I'll start with the number 4 option we have here.
Sure.
So number 4 is James Daniels, and would be likely a reunion with the Chicago Bears, since Daniels was drafted by the Bears in 2018, but was allowed to enter free agency by Ryan Poles the year he became GM. And the move was considered Poles' first big mistake, obviously letting him go. And he is good, not great. Sorry, that was written down a little bit differently here. But obviously, Daniels, when he first was on the Bears, he was also good, not great. So I understand the reasoning of letting him leave. But there could be a chance to, kind of bring him back for a smaller deal and see if he can fill in that position. But that is, again, the number 4 option. So the number 4 option is usually the option that's just in case, right? So your fourth
if all
option
the other players decide to, re-sign with their team or whatever, because, they have the assets and the money to do it. But yeah, James Daniels on the Steelers right now, I just looked up. He's 27 years old. Could be a offensive guard target for the Bears, but obviously we got 3 more names to talk about. Obviously, like you said, we're going to start from 4 and go down to 1. Dan, talk about number 3 on the list, man.
Yeah, so number 3 is probably one of the more comeback players of the year in my book. I think he's someone that really made his name known on the Eagles offensive line, and I'm sure you've heard of him. That's Mekhi Becton. He's fresh off the Super Bowl championship, which he played phenomenally in. And Becton may prefer to resign with Philadelphia, so we don't exactly know the case there. But knowing that the money is tight with the Eagles, he would fit in very well with Chicago, knowing that the money is very free to spend. So he would be a great fit for the position in Chicago. Obviously, the idea is that he has played many years as like a backup, and then many years as a starter. Being the last 3 years, he was starting potential, and this championship game, he really proved his potential here.
Yeah.
So. He would be a good fit in Chicago. I think so. But again, he's number 3 for a reason. There's
the only thing that I kind of think about with Mekhi Becton, I know he's a great player at the Eagles, but look at the Eagles offensive line. It is like one of the most star-studded line. He's in between Lane Johnson and I can't think of the other guy on the other side of him. But I was talking actually, Peter's been in the chat a little bit talking about this. He's a little bit injury prone. He did have a little bit of a bounce back year, but he was like, very heavily protected around him. It wasn't just him. Now with the Bears situation right now, just because of, our whole offensive line isn't completely solidified right now. I think Mekhi Becton might be a little bit of a risk for the Bears. I know, especially now thinking about the two players we just talked about, Trey Smith, who got the franchise tag, and Mekhi Becton. Those players were two players, they were compared because of that Super Bowl. Becton obviously had a better Super Bowl. Trey Smith probably had a better season, but I'm not sure. Like Becton, I think is going to expect a very high, Eagles don't have a lot of money. He's going to expect a very high, contract right now. So kind of going off from number 3. Number 2, this is a player I've been seeing flowing around a lot on Twitter.
Yeah, me too.
A lot of people have been talking about him. I didn't know too much about him just because, I don't know too much about the offensive line with the NFL. I'm kind of more into the wide receivers and positions, but trying to get more in defensive, offensive side of the ball. Will Fries, kind of a funny name, but Will Fries.
Will Fries.
French fries. Fries was dominant in 2024, earning an 86.9 grade from Pro Football Focus. He's a former 7th round draft pick. Fries outplayed his position this far in where compared to like where he was drafted, and that now he's due for a pretty big payday. If he's smart, Ryan Poles might go after Will Fries. But the only thing about Will Fries that I've noticed that I kind of see looking at that grade, the 86.9 grade, it's a great grade, but guess what, man? He only played 5 games this season.
Yeah.
He broke his leg in week 5, and he was out for the whole rest of the season. But within 5 weeks, he did have a really good grade. But it's hard to measure somebody when they don't play 16 games in the season. What do you think about Will Fries? I know if you saw a little
injury,
bit of reports. Yeah.
I did see, especially the way you said it on Twitter. Like I've been, everyone's been talking about it on Twitter. I'm definitely worried at the injury idea, just because like the Bears last year were pretty darn beat up at the injury at the offensive line. So I unfortunately would probably skip Will Fries because even though he only had one major long-term injury, I think the idea of him being on a prove-it year ended up being very like injury prone. So it would be nice to move on to another direction of someone who's a little bit more healthy, or someone that can stand the course. Because signing Will Fries would be great, right? Give him the money, but at the end of the day, if he's only starting half the games, then you might as well invest in a good backup. So
true.
I might be out on the Will Fries train just because of the injuries, and but I do understand his potential. So even if he does get signed, I wouldn't be altogether pissed because it's understandable. He's second on this list for a reason.
The only thing I like about Will Fries is his age. He's 26. If you break your leg and coming back from an injury 26, kind of know me. I broke my ankle last year being at 25 years old. It's kind of you being a little bit younger, you can recover from these injuries much better compared to the next guy we're going to be talking about, who's a little bit older. And he's number 1 on the list just because of his, he's been in the league for a while. He's proved it guy. He's on the Detroit Lions right now. And, he's a familiar face with Ben Johnson. That would be Kevin Zeidler. Kevin Zeidler, arguably he was arguably on one of the best offensive lines in the NFL with the Detroit Lions. He spent 1 year in Detroit with Ben Johnson, so obviously he knows a little bit of familiarity with Ben Johnson and that, coaching staff. He's older, obviously, like I just said, he's 34 years old compared to Will Fries, who is 26. It's an 8-year gap, but it would not be a long-term option for the Bears. This would be like a few-year option. Maybe we hit the, draft, let some of these guards build up, maybe in the 2nd and the 3rd round. Ryan Poles needs to hit on these picks, though. It's the only thing about this. What do you think about Kevin Zeidler, man?
I like Kevin Zeidler. I mean, obviously his age is a big question mark, but I would sign him. I do think that he fits the mold, especially for Ben Johnson trying to recreate. That would be a very good, solid veteran piece. And he would be reliable for Caleb Williams in the 2 years where he's, beginning to make huge strides into becoming an NFL star. So I do like his position. Again, not long term. I don't think majority of the people that we would have ended up signing would be long term. I don't think anyone's going to be like a 5-year deal that plays all
Sure.
5 years. But I do see Kevin Zeitler making a little bit of sense on a 2-year deal for us. Just to, even if he has injury, it's someone that has, he has that prowess. He's owned the offensive line in Detroit for a very long time now. So it would be cool to see him in the Bears.
It seems like, there's a lot of names floating around at the guard position. It also depends on what happens at the center position for the Bears. Guard has got to be number one priority, but center has got to be a very close second. We're not going to get into the center pick, positions today. Obviously, you guys know some of the names floating around, Drew Dalman, a few others. But just because Trey Smith, got that franchise tag, we wanted to talk about all those different free agents that are flowing around in the offensive guard position that the Bears could target. So Kevin Zeitler, Will Fries, Mekhi Becton, and James Daniels as well. So those are some names you guys should look out for. Obviously, it's unfortunate that Trey Smith got that franchise tag with the Chiefs today, but understandable. I see why the Chiefs did it. It's, it was obviously not a stupid decision on their part, to keep him for one more year because he is a great name. But yeah, kind of going into some more Bears news, man. Yeah, we did get a little bit of, kind of some news today about the NFL and salary cap position. Dan, you want to take away from talk about a little bit?
Of course. So the NFL announced obviously that the salary cap has been slightly raised, which it has been for the last multiple years. It is currently at $279.2 million per team, which is roughly $24 million up from 2024, and is another record high season. So according to Over the Cap, though, the Bears officially have $79.75 million per cap space. Let's just call it $80 million. And for the 2025 season, ahead of the new league year, which begins March 12th. So we're kind of counting that down.
That is around the corner, man.
Weeks. Yeah,
wow,
that's coming very, very soon. And then the 2025 NFL Combine has officially kicked off. I'm sure you've seen a lot of your favorite social media personalities are currently at the event interviewing their favorite coaches, scouts, stuff like that. So that is very, very exciting. And the NFL Combine obviously leads up to one very important thing, and that's what the Bears will do with their number 10 pick in this year's draft. So obviously you've seen a lot of photos of Ryan Poles hanging out at the Combine, staying for the D-line, O-line movements and stuff like that, which he usually does each year. He's usually one of the longer tenured people in the room.
Exactly.
So he'll be there he'll be there multiple days each year. So but here are some names that we have here for the number 10 pick. I mean, some have moved slightly, some have stayed the same, and some have dropped. But here are kind of the names that Tyler and I are both excited for, but also the ones that the mock drafts are kind of showing a potential for. So the first one, obviously, is kind of our biggest fan here is Will Campbell, offensive tackle at LSU. We've talked about him plenty of times in this podcast, but I do unfortunately believe that he will be drafted a little bit earlier than time, just knowing the potential that he brings. And obviously, there's one team that screams out to me that I just got a reply of their goals to build through offensive line and defensive line. That's the Patriots. So I do think Will Campbell would fit perfectly with the Patriots. I think he's definitely a Mike Vrabel kind of guy. It would be awesome. He would be a perfect fit in Chicago, but unfortunately, he might get taken just a few spots ahead. There's Will Campbell. There's Kelvin Banks. We've heard a lot of. He's definitely in the availability of us at number 10. He might be even a little bit after, but he's definitely still up there of just like if you draft him, then he's a foundation piece, which I'd be very excited to see him in a Bears uni as well. And then the next two here, there's one name I recognize, but there's a new name on here that I have not seen before.
Yeah, we got a few more names, kind of flowing around with the Bears at the number 10 pick. This is one I'm really excited about. This is a guy who I actually really want the Bears to target at the number 10 pick. Obviously, if Will Campbell doesn't slip to number 10, which I do not see him slipping past number 5, he's he's going to be a generational offensive lineman, kind of like Joe Alt for the Chargers. Marvin Mambu, is that how?
Armand Membu, that sounds pretty close.
You're my spelling guy because it's hard for me to, but he's offensive tackle on Mizzou. There's a few different reports about him today. He was a stud on Mizzou. Like he was apparently he allowed only 9 quarterback pressures, and those quarterback pressures, those players who pressured the quarterback didn't even get to the quarterback. That's what's one thing about him. So that's what I like about Mambu. I really think he's going to be a decent pick for the Bears if they go. He's very projected that he's going to be there at number 10. I don't see anybody before us taking him, but I really do like that idea for the Bears. And then there's another one that I'm trying to, kind of compare like apples to oranges. Josh Smith, offensive tackle from Ohio State. He's another prospect that's going to be a really good athlete in the NFL. I really do think that he could be another good key piece as well for this Bears, team, especially that we're not getting, Trey Smith and signing from free agency. I do like these two names, man. These are the two names that have really been popping to me. Simmons and Mambu. These are one of the two names that I really like. Is there any name that you kind of think
These
that?
names, yeah, these names definitely lean in for me. I'm thinking Kelvin Banks, if he ends
Mhm,
up at offensive tackle, that would make a lot of sense. I do think obviously whatever happens in free agency would help us with the draft, kind of understanding a little bit more on who's open. But I do think with Trey Smith getting franchise tagged, I do think that
mhm.
number 10 pick is officially going to go towards our offensive line. There's a little bit of hype with Ashton Genty I've seen recently, but I do think that would be tough. It would be tough to
It
push
is.
that, especially with the offensive line and the way it played last year. Let's not sit here and say that the offensive line was great. The offensive line might have been the worst in the league last season
Mhm.
because no
Yeah.
1,000-yard rushers, high sacked in the league. So like that needs to be fixed.
It
And I
needs to
think
be
Ben
addressed.
Johnson understands as well. Ben
It,
Johnson is definitely on
like
the
you
page
said,
for
man,
that.
as much as I would love the Bears to target Ashton Genty in the draft, it's just we got to focus on the offensive line first. That's the main priority. I'm seeing Ashton Genty going number 6 to the Raiders right now, man.
Hmm.
That's what I've been seeing because of the whole stirring, the drama going around that happened yesterday with Matthew Stafford and Tom Brady hanging out in Montana. There,
Yeah.
people are talking about that. Why were they hanging out? Oh, trying to recruit him to potentially, get traded to
Yeah.
Las Vegas Raiders because Tom Brady is a part owner in the Raiders organization. So Ashton Genty could be going number 6 to like they did with Brock Bowers. He was a generational talent. The Raiders took a risk on him, and look how good he did last year. I could
Exactly.
see them do the same thing with Ashton Genty. But enough of Ashton Genty talk. Bears got to stick with the offensive line. You know what I
Hmm.
mean for this draft. That's got to be. I see a few few comments in the chat. Uh, Peter said it's Justin Simmons, not Josh Simmons. Is it not Josh Simmons?
Is
It's Justin Simmons.
take a look.
Really?
Take a look.
Justin Simmons is the safety. He said Josh Simmons. Oh, see, I'm right sometimes, but it is Josh Simmons. Justin
It's Josh
Simmons is
Simmons.
Just
Let's go.
yeah, let's go.
1 point
They
for Tyler. Let's go.
Peter's keeping me on my toes, man.
Yeah,
He's
he
on my
does. He does.
he
He
always
keeps me on my
does.
toes as well.
He's trying to screw around with me. But welcome to the podcast, Peter. You got throw some comments in there about any of these players. We'll love to throw them up. But kind of steering away from the number 10 pick. Let's go into a little bit about what we've been hearing with Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles to kind of end off this Bears discussion. Besides what we're going to end off with afterwards, which is going to be a fun little discussion that we got.
Mhm.
Dan, talk a little bit about Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson during their press conference at the Combine.
Yeah, so obviously, Combine Week is fully upon us. So Ben Johnson got his interviews with PFT. He got his interviews with PMT on Part of My Take. He got his interviews with ESPN, and then Ryan Poles had a singular interview with Bears press conference at the Combine, just to kind of go over what his thoughts were.
Mhm.
And we're gonna mesh both of them together because Ben Johnson had a million different interviews. All of them kind of surrounded the same questions, the same topics. But Ben Johnson, we definitely got an idea of this guy would give up his balls to win a
Mhm.
Super Bowl in Chicago. So that just shows you how important some of those interviews were.
Mhm.
But first and foremost, Ryan Poles mentioned that the release of Walker and Everett last week, which we were both kind of dumbfounded by, even though they were good moves, we were interested in seeing what the idea behind them was. Poles mentioned that it was a scheme fit, probably likely for the new coordinators and not having an idea on what position they would be, knowing how
Mhm.
much they're paid. And he said that he wanted to release them early so they would have an opportunity to interview in free agency before spots are taken up, knowing that tight end and defensive line are kind of positions that people go into early just to
Yeah.
get whatever's best available. So it's nice of him to kind of give them a little bit of effort into being like, hey, this part's done. Now you just could get to interview.
Sure. Yeah, I kind of just talking about that real quick. Gerald Everett, the releasing, that we talked about there a few weeks ago. I expected that. DeMarcus Walker, it would have been nice to keep him as a depth piece. He did perform really well, in my opinion, last year when he
Mhm.
got the opportunities to. He was getting to the quarterback and stuff like that. But it is nice that Ryan Poles made the decision earlier so that these guys, teams can or players can talk to these teams and stuff like that. So good on Ryan Poles then to do it
Mhm.
early so that these guys have more of an opportunity instead of late, and then they miss out on a lot. But yeah, talking a little bit about Ben Johnson and what he talked about, the coach hire and stuff like that. This was a great quote I love. He said, he didn't hire a bunch of his friends because he wanted a different mix of experiences, energy, and ideas from players.
Mhm.
And, he wanted that, to bring that to this locker room. And I love that, idea from Ben Johnson, wanting not just, people he knows, but people around the league. And, that he really spoke highly about one coach in particular, Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen's got that experience on the defensive side of the ball. He knows defense, and he is fired up by that. And I'm super excited about Dennis Allen, and it's and all these coaches with the Bears staff. And then, kind of the last quote we kind of got out of Ben Johnson with the combine. There was a bunch of other ones with Pardon My Take and a few other ones. He said he wants this staff to feel like liberty of coaching. He wants this staff to be like, ultra good, one of the best. He looks up to, Bill Belichick and a few others. But yeah, Dan, talk a little bit about, 2025 Coach of the Year odds, and tell me what kind of is rolling around the league right now about who's projected.
We know exactly how this works, right? Because of the Bears always seem to have players or coaches that end up randomly getting picked first, right? Justin Fields was number one in MVP voting after the Super Bowl his second season, and then he, Matt Eberflus was in there for Coach of the Year last season as well. So that has changed. Ben Johnson officially has the highest odds to win the 2025 Coach of the Year at plus 700, which is good news. But for me, I think that's pressure that I'm not excited for just yet.
Sure.
Just because I think I forgot what Ben Johnson said in one of the interviews with PMT was saying that just it's okay to be excited. It's okay to be super happy about it, super stoked. But at the end of the day, you have to win games.
Exactly.
The amount of games we won last year was definitely important to me, but I don't think he wins Coach of the Year unless the Bears win 11 or 12 games. I think if we win 10 games, then that's exactly what people are expecting. So, but the second place for Mike Vrabel's at plus 850. So that kind of gives you an idea. They're putting the newer coaches in there to give them some pressure and thinking that they're going to turn the team around. Mike Vrabel, good luck, honestly, is all I'm going to say, because that team last year that was given, there's not many changes that were made other than coaching staff. And yeah, they're going to make a lot of changes this year, but exactly how many changes to say that they're going to win coach? Again, Coach of the Year is usually a team that is going to win 12 games.
Yeah.
Are the Patriots going to win 12 games next year? I think
Probably
they might lose as many games as they did this year, realistically. I don't know what the situation is.
The guy who won Coach of the Year this year, Kevin O'Connell,
Mhm.
lost twice to the Lions, and he still won Coach of the Year, and not Dan Campbell. Think about that. So, Coach of the Year, you got to be winning a lot. Last quote I wanted to bring up it's not in our document, but I kind of wanted to bring up that I watched with the Pardon My Take podcast. One of the guys brought up, he's like, in order for this to be a successful year, he's like, I got to see at least 6 wins. And Ben Johnson said, just 6? So that's what I love. I love his, enthusiasm that he wants to win. That's what we need to bring to this, team as well. But yeah,
100%.
That's what I like.
Good interviews. Go watch them if you haven't yet.
Yeah.
Go watch the PMT interview. That was really, really fun.
Good. Yeah, to end off this Bears discussion, this is going to be a fun little game. And Peter, if you're in the chat still, I want you to kind of get your take on this. Maybe you can give us your number one or whatever. Last week, we played a game called Top 5 Ryan Poles Draft Picks, and we ranked ours. I had Kyler Gordon as my number one. Dan had Caleb Williams and a few others. But this week, we switched it up a little bit. Top 5 worst draft picks by Ryan Poles. So, Dan, you want to start off for your list, or you want me to kick it off on my list?
I'll go ahead and kick it off since you went first last time. Cool. These lists don't seem altogether that different, but I'm very excited to get into it. So, number 5, the 5th worst player, is defensive tackle Zach Pickens. Obviously, in his 3rd year, he is officially not getting many minutes. I mean, he got some minutes last year, but seeing him compared to Javon Dexter, who got drafted in the same year, a round apart, Zach Pickens definitely has a lot more work to do. And then number 4 is Trenton Gill. I ended up changing this just before because I looked at your list and I realized, oh my gosh. I realized, oh my God, Trenton Gill.
I just looked at the document, man, and I'm like, you did not have Trenton Gill on that list.
I did not have Trenton Gill. So I did add him. I replaced him with Roschon Johnson. So Roschon Johnson originally was my 5, but now Trenton Gill is pushed to my 4th because, again, he drafted a punter, which he did twice now. And the first punter that he drafted, obviously a later round punter, not good at all. Was probably in the bottom 10 of each category. So, but Trenton Gill does have a job right now. I believe he is hired in the Packers or the Buccaneers. I believe he does have a job still
somewhere. I did see him on the
Number 3, Tyler Scott. Tyler Scott had a really, really fun rookie season. He caught a couple deep passes, but nothing ever amounted after that. I think he's still a player that has potential. He has a potential for a roster spot here, but there's just reasoning as to why he hasn't gotten any targets last year when obviously he's a deep ball threat and Caleb Williams throws a really good deep ball. Number 2 is Kieran Amagaji. I think he's lovely hometown boy. He's a great offensive lineman, but my worry is that even in a backup role, he was absolutely horrible last season. So
He
if
got
that takes,
exposed, man.
yeah, if that takes a year or two for him to get better and just like practice his craft, and so be it. But at this exact moment, Kieran Amagaji, I unfortunately don't think will be a member of the Chicago Bears for the years that we thought he would be as a third overall pick. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, I don't think he's going to pan out to as much as what we figured he'd be. And then number one, everyone can guess this. I actually might wait for my number one because I think all of us might have the same number one. So Todd, I'll let you go, and then if you want to say your number one, or let Peter guess what the number one might be.
Cool. Sounds good, man. And
Yeah.
you got a very close list to mine on the top 5, worst draft picks by Ryan
Mhm.
Poles. Number 5 on my list is Zach Pickens. Unfortunately, Zach Pickens, we didn't see too much of him. He's been injured a lot. Didn't really get a lot of opportunity. When he got the opportunity, didn't really arise too much. I'm just putting Zach Pickens on my number 5. Number 4 on my list, I'm going to be putting Tyler Scott on number 4. Like you said, man, I really do think he's got the potential to be a decent wide receiver. I'm not going to say a great wide receiver, but he's got to be a deep ball threat. I think Ben Johnson's going to realize this with Tyler Scott, kind of like he did with Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams was a Heisman winner. Let's talk about that. He
Mhm.
was a great, great wide receiver at Alabama. Tyler Scott was like a 3rd round pick out of Cincinnati, but I do think that Tyler Scott has the potential to be like a sneaky, wide receiver out there. I really do. So I'm going to
Absolutely.
put him at number 4. It's just he hasn't really gotten his opportunities with the Bears so far. Number 3 on my list is going to be Karan Amagaji. Reason why is we talked about it a little bit. He really did get exposed when he had to fill in for Braxton Jones when he got hurt. He did not perform really well. Everyone saw the clips on Twitter of these edge rushers completely running around Karan. He's blocking the wrong way. I just thought, maybe develop a little bit more, but I know they were excited about him when they drafted him. Let's
Mhm.
just see how a few years of him potentially riding the bench sees, he gets some more reps on
100%.
red shirting a little bit. Number 2, Trenton Gill. Trenton Gill was like one of the worst rated punters the last 3 years, something like that. 2 years with he was rated terrible. He had no punts inside the 20. They were all for touchbacks. He
Mhm.
just was, he had muff punts for like 30 yards,
Oh
35
yeah.
yards. And yeah, it was Trent Gill was a rough experience for the Bears. And that's why we got Torrey Taylor now, who's been
Mhm.
a rock solid piece. And number 1 on my list, number 1 on Dan's list, you guys can guess it.
Mhm.
Velus Jones Jr.
Velus Jones.
The guy who cannot catch a punt for the life of him, the guy who, fumbles it ridiculously, the guy who was maybe let's try out as a running back to see
Mhm.
if he's going to potentially stay on the roster as a running back. It worked in preseason, but other than that, he got
After that,
cut.
he never got. Yeah. Yeah.
So
He's a third round pick. So he was one of the first position players that was on offense that Ryan Poles ever drafted. So there was some excitement there because I remember coming out of Tennessee, everyone was pretty hyped on him because he was the speedster. He were just like, okay, we got our Tyreek Hill, but unfortunately, he just never had the potential. I look at him sort of in the same light I see Patrick Williams, right? Someone that had everything to his disposal.
it's a good
Someone that
comparison.
had a really good. Like he has great building blocks and great building potential, but for some reason on the field, you just could never see his energy. You couldn't see his excitement for the game. And so that's what I missed out on, especially during Hard Knocks. You can kind of see it. Like he had excitement for the game, not in the same way that Ian Wheeler did. They were both fighting for the same position, which makes me feel like Ian Wheeler probably deserved that spot more than Velus, but of course Velus did end up getting the position because of health. But
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone can agree Velus Jones was the worst pick because he's probably one of the only ones that has gotten released other than Trenton Gill. So we were both on top of that, man.
Yeah.
Velus Jones was definitely the worst.
We got a few chats in there. We got Brant coming in the chat. What's up, Brant? He said here, I don't know why it's not popping up on my screen. I click that. I'll pop it up in a second once it unfreezes, but it says, feeling down today, boys, in Chicago sports. Here we go. It's popping up now. Chicago sports team's outlook made me feel worse. What is something I could feel good for our teams moving forward? Brant, in my opinion, man, what we're talking about now, the Chicago Bears are what we can look forward to. Ben Johnson is the truth, in my opinion. He is going to be helping this roster out. He realizes we have the 4th, most cap space. He realizes how important an offensive line is. I know there's a lot of pieces that have to be, developed with this Bears roster, offensive line, a little bit on the defense as well. The safety
Mhm.
position's a little bit kind of in question just because of Jaquan Brisker's injury with concussions and stuff like that. But I do think the Bears are in a great spot right now. I think
Yeah.
the Bears, and a lot of people are going to be like, why, Tyler, why are you saying this? I think the Bears are in a better position than the Packers right now. I think the
Yeah.
Packers paid uh, Jordan Love too much money at the wrong time. I think that that there's a big
They're stuck with
contract
him.
on Jordan Love's end. They're stuck with him, and look at all the little side wide receivers they had to get. Just because. And let me tell you, those wide receivers for the Packers are pretty decent. Jaden Reed, but look, fumble issues. You got injury issues with Christian Watson. I think the Bears are in a better position than the Packers now. Obviously, records last season can't reflect it, but looking forward, Bears are very hopeful, and I'm
Mhm.
really excited for the draft. I'm excited for free agency. I'm excited for Caleb Williams. I'm excited for Ben Johnson. I'm excited to find out in spring where they're going to be playing, because that is the
Mhm.
report that we're going to find out in spring where the Bears are going to be playing. And it's rumored Arlington Heights is going to be the potential location for the Bears. So, Brandon, keep your head high, man. I like
Mhm.
the Bears in the future. And yeah, unfortunately, the other teams right now are just a little bit of a rebuilding phase. I know rebuild Chicago is kind of like the quote right now with a lot of these teams. But Dan, what do you think, man? A little bit about that.
I got one thing for you guys. One thing. This is gonna be a pretty big one. The Bulls officially won the Josh Giddey Alex Caruso trade. So there's
Ooh,
one
this
piece of hype for you. The Bulls officially won that trade. For anyone that was hating on the Bulls for trading Alex Caruso and not getting a draft pick, Josh Giddey is the new face of Chicago. I could see Josh Giddey being a pretty prominent player for us in the next couple of years. So that's we're going to get into Bulls in a second here, and you're going to know
Mhm,
exactly why we're talking about Josh Giddey. But
mhm.
that's my hype, is that the Bulls won the Alex Caruso trade. It's been about a year since, a couple months has passed. So that's pretty refreshing for me, knowing that Alex Caruso, the baller he is, got the contract, and I'm really happy for him. But Josh Giddey
It's a
is
good one.
playing phenomenally, and whether he's on the Bulls next year or traded for other pieces, he's going to be a big help to Chicago. So that's my biggest update here, is that the Bulls aren't altogether in the rough. But we're gonna go through some games here, because we're
Yeah.
gonna let's start the UC chat here. Let's
Before
get
we
some
start
Bulls
UC
action.
chat, I just wanted to bring up
Yeah.
what Peter said right here. He did say we
Mhm.
took Karan Amagaji over Dominic Pooney, who was 11th rated overall guard and was on the all rookie team. Unfortunate for the Bears, but
Mhm.
they took a risk on Karan. Brand, before we go into the UC chat, said word around Shy is that Peter C can't hit fastballs in the cage. Do you guys have insight whether or not that's true? I don't know. That's kind of what I've been hearing, man. I've been
Yeah.
hearing Peter C can't hit a fastball.
Dude,
I
I know.
guess
I
you guys
saw
are
I
gonna
saw
have to find out
Shefty.
soon. Yeah.
Shefty posted it. Shefty posted about it.
But if you guys are going to cages tomorrow, let me know how that goes. I heard you guys might be going to there. And Brant says right here, thank you, boys. Much appreciated. No problem, man. Always here to keep your head high, man. Let's get right to the UC chat, talking about the Bulls and the Hawks today. Dan, start us off with a little bit of Bulls action. Once you get a sip of, actually, you can get your sip of water. I can start us off if you want to.
Go
man.
ahead, sir. Go ahead.
All
Thank
right,
you, sir.
cool. So UC chat with the Bulls. We've had a few games since last week when we met with you guys. Let's talk a little bit about these games. Obviously, like we talked about, we're not going to go dive in super deep into these, but we'll talk about why the Bulls won these games, why the Bulls lost these games, top leading scores, and other stuff like that. Let's start off with the Bulls talk with you guys. And the first game we're going to talk to you guys about is the Bulls against the Suns. And this took place Saturday, February 22nd. So last Saturday, about 5 days ago with the Bulls. So Dan, start us off about this. What kind of went on with the Bulls and the Suns?
Yeah, so this was played at the United Center. The Suns obviously are not in a great position right now. They're currently the 11th place in the Western Conference, which is even lower than Chicago, with having a better record. But the Bulls ended up losing this game, unfortunately, 117 to 121. It was a closer affair, but there were some reasons as to why we did lose by only 4 points. Let's get into the Bulls' leading scorers here. Our guy, Josh Giddey, 24 points, 8 rebounds, 10 assists, 3 steals, 1 block. A very, very close triple-double. And I think if he tried, he could have got the quadruple double if he really put his mind to it. But
Pretty
you know
close.
what? Very, very excellent game there. Kobe White also had a phenomenal game. 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists. So this game, the reason why I had a feeling the Bulls should have won this game is because the Suns only had 9 available players, meaning 5 starters and 4 bench players. No other big men. Not many big men on the team. But fortunately for the Suns, their 3 stars did combine for 81 points altogether. Beal, Durant, and Booker. The Bulls only shot 41% from field goal, while the Suns shot a good 48% with mainly those 3 players combined. And the Bulls led with points off turnover 17-7. So
Mm.
that should have been a win in our books, technically,
Yeah.
looking at the way this went. But we did lose the rebounding game, 49-45. I believe Vucevic was out for this game. And the Bulls were a perfect 17 from 17 from the free throw, which happens, I believe, only 10 games a season for Chicago, which is a pretty rare amount to see a full 100% free throw game, especially when it's over 10 attempts per game. So 17 of 17 from the free throw line. Bulls could have got this game. There's just a little bit of an edge star power wise, right? 4 points.
I do like how the Bulls performed in this game. Suns, obviously, looking at their record, they are better than their record, in my opinion, when you got Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Bradley Beal's a little bit, he's been flowing in and out of the starting lineup. But when you're putting up, a competing game against these teams, the Suns, and we'll talk about the Sixers, and then we talk about the game after that with the Clippers. When you're putting up a competing game and you lose by 5 points, I think that's an overall, it's a win in my book for the Bulls. I know it's not a win on paper, but as long as they're competing in the game and not getting blown out by 40 points like we saw a few weeks ago with the Pistons, I do like how the Bulls are competing in these games. And like you said, 17 of 17 from the free throw line, points off turnover, field goal percentage was so close, 41% to 48%. I like that for the Bulls. I really do. But yeah, let's steer away from the Suns and let's talk about the next game, which was a crazy game.
Insane for the Bulls, game. Did not expect it to be. We talked about this last week, saying that, hey, Philadelphia, you better win this game, because if they win this game, then they pass us in the standings. But oh my gosh, we were served a treat here, right? So Bulls versus Philadelphia in Philly. 76ers are 12th in the Eastern Conference at this moment when the game was played. So there were two spots behind us.
I'm sorry, Brooklyn just jumped them. So
Brooklyn jumped him. So
yeah.
But some of the Bulls leading scorers here, some incredible games. So Josh Giddey, 25 points, 16 rebounds, 6 assists. He was 72% from field goal and 100% from three, going 3 for 3. And then the second best player was Kevin Huerter, newly acquired Kevin Huerter from the Zach LaVine deal. He had 23 points, 4 assists, and he was 7 of 11 from three-point percentage, which is one of the better shooting games of the season from any premier player for the Bulls. Yep. So that's a pretty strong, performance there. But it's, other than Kevin Huerter's performance, this is probably the best Bulls game of the year when it comes to statistics, win margin, players. This was a phenomenal game, and I watched just a little bit of it. I didn't get the full scope of it because obviously if it's a Bulls game and we're winning by a little bit, my first thought is, okay, so that means fourth quarter comeback by the opposite team. So I wasn't much invested because I had a feeling that this was going to be another one of those games that Bleacher Report is going to talk about. Oh my gosh, biggest comeback in NBA history. Holy crap. But this was the most points scored in a Bulls game this season. And I just want to go over a little bit the new guys, because the new guys, again, we got some new guys in the Zach LaVine deal, and we were pretty upset by it because these seems just like roster spot fillers. We dropped Sanogo. These were just players that we didn't think would earn a lot of playing time. But oh my gosh, has Zach Collins, Trey Jones, and Kevin Huerter really did not disappoint these last few games.
They've been doing very well. They've been taking advantage of those opportunities, man.
Oh yeah. So with I believe with Vucevic not playing, Vucevic didn't play this game, but also Joel Embiid didn't play this game. Zach Collins, newly acquired center, he had 19 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, 1 block. Straight swipe through, really good player. Really glad that he's playing that center position for us right now. Trey Jones, 4 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal. As your third string point guard, that's a pretty good.
That's a good stat line. Yeah.
Pretty good stats for him to give up. And then Kevin Huerter, 23 points, 4 assists. He had 34 minutes played, which was the second most on the team at that moment. Bulls shot 50% for the game. Sixers had 38%, which is pretty darn bad. Bulls had 45% from 3-point. And the Sixers, oh my gosh, 25% from 3, 10 of 40. And the reason I say it like that is because that's a Bulls stat.
That's a Bulls stat, yeah.
That's a Bulls stat right there. And then the Bulls obviously led the team with 32 assists compared to the Sixers' 19 assists.
Yep.
You have anything else you want to add here? Because this was probably the best game of the year, realistically.
Yep. Kevin Huerter, Stacey King nicknamed him the Red Baron now. He is been performing very well with opportunities. I've seen him airball a few threes or whatever here and there, but he comes back and he wants to take another shot and make it. I saw that in the game yesterday with the Clippers once we get into. He missed a 3-pointer, got the ball back, and he made a corner 3. He likes to just, he doesn't, give up. I feel like we see players like potentially Patrick Williams, who if he misses a shot will give up for the rest of the game. Kevin Huerter, Zach Collins, they've been taking advantage of these opportunities. I think, like you said, new guys are balling, man. And I like that. I really like this from taking advantage of the opportunities, especially with Zach LaVine gone. And and then no Vooch out as well. But let's get right into the last Bulls game, Bulls versus Clippers. That was yesterday. This game was, I thought this was another good game for the Bulls.
Hmm.
Obviously, they unfortunately did lose this game, but I thought this was a great game for the Bulls. Dan, you want to kick us off, man? With
Of
that?
course. So the Clippers are currently sixth in the Western Conference, which is probably one of the better teams we've faced in the last week or so. The Bulls did end up losing 117 to 122, very close to the score we had against the Suns, where we lost by one less point. It was 117 to
Mhm.
121. So this game is not that far off. But the Bulls' leading scorers, you can guess it, the best scoring player on the Bulls so far is Josh Giddey, 21 points, 8 rebounds, 12 assists, 2 rebounds, man, from that triple double. You got to give him that
Mhm.
triple double there. And then Zach Collins with arguably the best game of his career / his Bulls career. He did get a lot of new season highs, a lot of new career highs. Zach Collins, 21 points, 17 rebounds, 7 assists, 38 minutes, 3 assists away from that triple double. Your center's doing that. I don't think. I mean, like I look at Vucevic and how hard it was for him to get more than 2 assists a game. So
Mhm.
7 assists from Zach Collins on 38 minutes led the team. Very, very surreal moment for Zach Collins. I'm very excited for him and his future here in Chicago.
Mhm.
The Clippers did shoot 88% from their free throw. Bulls with their worst game of the season from their free throw line at 54%. And this is probably one of the bigger reasons as to why Zach Collins had such a phenomenal game on his part offensively, is because the Clippers had 10 blocks compared to the Bulls 1.
Mhm.
So there wasn't many blocks going on this game, especially for the Bulls side. And the Clippers had 29 points off turnovers. So this was definitely leveraged a little bit closer to the Clippers game plan than the Bulls. But for a 5-point game, I'd say the Bulls did pretty well. And I think if I'm looking at it, it's not the fundamentals. It's the fact that the Bulls can score a lot of points,
Yeah.
right? Josh Giddey owning the offensive, I was going to say the offensive line, but no, owning the offense on his, like the way that he wants it, being the lead point guard, the lead generator. He is making this team score. And that's really, really exciting to see about the way that he's playing recently. So we're going to get into that next. But any other closing remarks on the Bulls Clippers game?
I was there yesterday at CHSN watching
Mm-hmm.
the Bulls Clippers game. I was very happy with the Bulls performance this game. Clippers are fifth in the West, I believe, right now,
Yeah.
fifth or sixth in the West. I just think that they performed really well. They kept it a close game. Obviously, they have James Harden. James Harden closed it out in the fourth quarter when needed. You know, he got the
Mm-hmm.
last three to put him up by 6, so it was just foul time for the Bulls. I did think that the Bulls performed very well this game. Like you said, Zach Collins had a really good game. Josh Giddey had another great game. So I think, even though it's a loss and, Bulls fans are expecting, the losses to, add up for them right now, just because they want, a better draft pick. As long as we're keeping these competing games, I sound like a broken record. I'm fine with this with the Bulls. If we're getting blown up by 40, it's not fun to see. You just don't want to watch the next 2 quarters or whatever. But I was
Exactly.
happy with the Bulls this game. Free throw percentage was a little bad. Clippers had a lot of blocks on the Bulls. A lot of the point guards are trying to take blocks. But let's talk about one of the new Bulls, obviously that got
Mm-hmm.
with in the trade or not trade, but signed in before the season. Or no, I'm sorry, it was the trade with the Alex Caruso. Josh
Trade with
Giddey.
Alex Caruso, yes. Yeah.
Yep. Talk a little bit about Josh Giddey real quick.
So Josh Giddey, since the All-Star break, has probably one of the more dominant players in the NBA and in the entirety of the NBA. And so here are his stats in the 4 games with Chicago afterwards. He's had 97 points, 48 rebounds, 32 assists, 6 steals, and 4 blocks. So he's averaging just around 24, 23 points a game. His rebounds are just around 10, so he's averaging a double-double, and his assists are just around 6 or 7. So he's almost very close, averaging a triple-double these last 4 games. And then blocks. He's a taller guard, so he's getting in front of those other point guards that he's playing against. He is doing really well defensively, which at first he was a liability when he first came into the Bulls roster. So right now he's definitely, he's earned his weight in gold. And here's my next question here. So obviously versus the Sixers, here's the last stat. Giddey became the first Bulls guard to record 25 points, 15 rebounds, and 5 assists on 50% shooting since Michael Jordan. So that's
good company,
again,
man.
Yeah, only one player we've ever heard have multiple games that translated to someone as if it was Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
That was Zach LaVine. And so it's really nice to see Josh Giddey performing in that way since Zach LaVine's trade. But here's the last thing. If he consistently plays this well, maybe a little bit worse, even if it's a little bit better, does he deserve the contract in your eyes? We don't know what the contract looks like, but Tyler, is he a member of your Bulls leading in the future?
I like Josh Giddey. I do.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a good player for the team. I just think the Bulls should have did that contract before this season started. I know the Bulls wanted to play it out to see how Josh Giddey was going to perform. I
Mhm.
think he might expect a little bit more money now, in my opinion, with Zach LaVine gone. But I do like Josh Giddey. I think it would be cool if he stays.
Mhm.
I don't know how the Bulls would play without Josh Giddey because he's been a little bit of a facilitator on the court,
Yeah.
assists, points as well. I do like Josh Giddey with potentially a contract. I don't know how big of a contract. I don't know
Mhm.
what his numbers are looking at, but I like Josh Giddey. I do.
Yeah, I'd be fine with any 3-year deal that they offer Josh Giddey. But the other premier part that you were saying as well is that even if he wants more money, if he continues playing in this direction, he's going to be worth a lot more than whatever
Mhm.
Alex Caruso is worth. Right? We're
Oh,
not
yeah.
talking 2 first-round picks, but definitely worth a first-round pick extra. A little, maybe another cap space player, but definitely a good pickup by the Bulls. Again, the Bulls did win this Alex Caruso trade. Alex Caruso was given 4 years, $89 million. That's money that the Bulls did not have. But also, Alex Caruso isn't actually providing that much to the team at the moment. He's definitely their 3-and-D guy off the bench that he's doing really well for them. He's going to be a huge contributor in the playoffs. But I also think Josh Giddey is pretty much for who fits Chicago more at this point in the season. Josh Giddey is definitely the player I'd much rather have.
Yeah.
So that pretty much says that. The Bulls are currently 23-36, 10th in the Eastern Conference. I believe we're 1-7 in the last 7 games, last 8 games. So we've definitely been trying our best to lose, but unfortunately the teams under us are losing just as much. So we won't get into
That's
any
true.
mock drafts or what the drafts are going to look like just yet. Currently we're still the number 10 spot, so nothing's much changed. But the next 3 games we have going on here. So Friday, they're going to end up playing the Toronto Raptors at the United Center, which is Polish Heritage Night. So
Oh, wow.
Wszyscy jedziemy. I
you
won't be
going
there,
tomorrow?
unfortunately. I mean, I thought
Oh,
about it.
come on. I think you could
Maybe,
go.
maybe I will. Maybe I will.
They're
Who
giving out
knows?
a hat.
They're
Are they
giving out the
giving out a
hat.
There's a hat?
There's a hat.
I gotta look up the hat. Okay.
There
All
might
right.
be the hat.
I'm
Yeah, so
Polish,
maybe
man.
I'll look into that. Maybe I'll look into that. So that might be a
Oh,
fun time.
all right.
And then on the 2nd of March, so March is coming up, everyone, very, very quick. On the Sunday, first Sunday of March, Bulls play the Indiana Pacers in Indianapolis, which has been usually a pretty nice matchup for us last season. And then on the 4th, so the week after, first Tuesday of March, the Bulls are playing the Cleveland Cavaliers, the number 1 seed currently in the Eastern Conference, at the United Center. And every game that we've played against Cleveland has been pretty lopsided, so we'll see how this goes. But again, the Bulls can lose, and that's not a bad thing. The Bulls can
not a
lose,
bad
and that's a
thing.
good thing.
So looking at Raptors, Pacers, Cavs, I could see a win against the Raptors. Pacers, I see a loss. Cavs, I definitely see a loss. So I'm looking at 1 and 2 in the next 3 games for the Bulls.
Yeah,
But
I can see that as well.
as long as they can keep it a competing game, man, I'm cool with it.
That's
cool.
fine with me as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So kind of steering away from Bulls talk with you guys. That was all the games of the last week with the Bulls. Let's get right into our Blackhawks chat. So we had a few games as well in the Blackhawks. We had 3 Bulls games, and we also had 3 Blackhawks games as well. So let's talk. Blackhawks are kind of in the same situation as the Bulls right now. They've been losing a lot, and we'll talk about these games a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the Blackhawks versus Blue Jackets. I do see some in the chat. Let's see what we got going right here. Danny said, Peter said, you trying to go, Danny? Fellow Polacks unite. Maybe you guys.
Biało czerwoni Polska. Yeah, let's go. Yeah, let's do it.
I also see one more thing that I skipped by, my bad, in the chat before we get right into the Blackhawks Blue Jackets. I see Peter C said, starting lineup, Josh Giddey, Kevin Huerter, Manus Buzel, Zach Collins, and Nikola Vucevic. I kind of like that, man.
It could go hard. It could go hard. Again, that's a pretty good play-in team. I'm not going to hate him. That's an okay play-in team.
It could go hard. And then he also said Josh Giddey is better than Victor Wembanyama. Right now,
right now, who's playing?
Yeah, who's playing? Who's out? So let's get right into the Blackhawks Blue Jackets because this was an interesting game for the Blackhawks. Blackhawks are right now, the Blue Jackets right now are second in the wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. So before this game, they were competing to get into that second spot. And because of the outcome of this game, they did end up sliding to that second spot. The Hawks lost this game 5-1. Not a good game for the Hawks. Let's talk about it a little bit. Blue Jackets scored 4 minutes into the first period. Unfortunately for the Hawks, they did not score in that first period. 1-0 Blue Jackets in the first period intermission. In the second period, the Blue Jackets scored again 1 minute into the period with a power play opportunity, but the Hawks didn't go, away that quick. The Hawks, a few minutes later, got a power play opportunity of their own, and they ended up capitalizing and scoring. Craig Smith would score his 8th goal of the season. This was assisted by Alex Vlasic, his 19th, and Frank Nazar, his 7th assist of the season. But as you can kind of tell with the score, it being 5-1, unfortunately, that would be the last time the Hawks would score this game. The Blue Jackets would score one more time in the second period, and then 2 goals in the third period. Final score, the Hawks lost this game 5-1.
Yeah, oh my.
Bad outcome for the Hawks.
Mhm.
Let's talk a little bit about final stats and why the Hawks lost this game. The Hawks were outshot 28-21, so not a huge margin, 7-shot margin. The Blue Jackets had 39 hits on the Hawks, so that can kind of, ruffle your feathers a little bit. The Hawks scored once on 4 power play opportunities. Power play opportunity, you got to take advantage of those, man.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, it's a lot harder than a lot of people think it is being a 5-on-4, but they were only 25% from power play opportunities, 1 for 4. And then the Hawks only won 36% of the faceoffs this game. So a little bit of a rough game, losing 5-1. Yeah, not a good game for the Hawks, Dan.
Not a good game, especially with trying to start it off on a different chapter, especially after the Four Nations. Not the best start to each of the matches, but hopefully they get a little bit better and or worse, which is the day after Sunday. The Blackhawks had a chance because of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Toronto Maple Leafs are first in the Atlantic Division. Unfortunately, this game being played at the United Center, the Hawks did lose 2-5, so they put up one more goal than the game before. But the Hawks were the first team to score in this game, which kind of gave a big push and a big rush into seeing how the rest of the game is going to go. But they scored with a power play opportunity with 11 seconds to go in the first period. Teuvo Teravainen scored his 13th goal of the season, assisted by Tyler Bertuzzi, his 12th, and Ryan Donato, his 19th. So quite a way to start in the first period, going up 1-0 in the first intermission. And then the Leafs would go on a scoring frenzy. As Tyler had frenzy is the word that Tyler's using here. And in the second period, they scored the first goal 7 minutes into the second period, their second goal a few minutes later, and then their third goal of the game with 15 seconds to go in the game. So 8 seconds later, the Hawks responded with a goal of their own. So at this point, Philip Kurashev scored his 5th goal of the season, assisted by Frank Nazar and Tyler Bertuzzi's 13th assist, which was his second assist of the game. And the Hawks would go down 3-2 in the second period, still trying to fight back.
1 goal difference, man.
Still trying
all
to
it
fight
takes
back.
is, especially if you can't, in the third period, if you can't get anything going for 18 minutes, pull the goalkeeper, tie that game up, maybe go to overtime. But going down, especially this is a good team, like we just kind of talked about. So, Dan, kind of talk about that third period, man.
Yeah, so the Hawks unfortunately could not score in the third period, while the Leafs did score twice in the third. Final score, Hawks lose 5-2. The Hawks only won 39% of the faceoffs in this game. Very similar stats to the game there was in the last one. The Hawks obviously did score one more goal. Tyler Bertuzzi's leading his way in the assist game, but there was a bit of trouble going on here in the Hawks, because especially going towards the trade deadline, which we'll talk about after this next game, you might see some changes going on, because a lot of these 5-2, 5-1 games, they can't be happening game after game.
No. And, going into that Four Nations break, the Hawks had a few good wins, and they were very, high on themselves going into the Four Nations break. And then losing to the Blue Jackets, understandable. They're looking for the wild card spot. Maple Leafs, another understandable game that they could potentially lose just because they are first in their division right now. Now, talking about this game that we're about to discuss, the Blackhawks and the the Utah Hockey Club. This was it's kind of an interesting game for them. Dan, you want to kick us off with that one, man?
Yeah, so this was played in Utah, and this is definitely one of those games where people felt the Hawks could have a little bit more of a comeback, losing the games by a lot these last 2 months. The Utah Hockey Club is currently 5 points back from the second wildcard spot in the Western Conference, and this game was kind of a big deal for the Hawks, but the Hawks ended up losing a close one, 1-2 goals. The Hawks scored first in this game, just like they did in the last one, after a holding penalty on Connor Bedard. The Hawks had a power play opportunity. Seth Jones would be the one to find the back of the net, score his 7th goal of the season, assisted by Ryan Donato, his 20th, and Teuvo Teravainen, his 29th. The Hawks would be up 1-0 the same way as the last one in this first intermission break. The second period was quite quiet until the Utah Hockey Club scored with 44 seconds left in the period. I hate how that happened the last 3 games, that someone scored with at least a minute left.
That gives that gives that team a lot of, bring them down a little bit going into that locker room. If you can keep, them not scoring within the last few minutes, that always gives you a little bit of a boost. But I was talking to a few of the guys at the CHSN, some of the talents over there, and, giving up a goal in that last minute, it's hard. It's hard. It brings you down a little bit. It really does. But yeah, kind of, Talk a little bit more about this game, Dan.
Yeah, so the second period was obviously quiet until the Utah Hockey Club scored under a minute left, and the Hawks and Utah Hockey Club were tied 1-1 going into second period intermission.
Tie game.
Then the
It could be
third
anybody's
period,
game. Yeah.
it could be anybody's game. Third period came around. Hockey Club scored 12 minutes into the period. Unfortunately for the Hawks, they did not find the back of the net again. This was the final score. Hawks lose. Utah Hockey Club 2-1.
And this was a rough one
3 in a
because
row.
this is a game this team is middle of the pack right now. They're kind of sniffing at the wild card spot. They're a few games kind of out of it, or a few they're what did I put there with how many? I have 5 points out of that wild card spot. So they're kind of, they're desperate to win too. But the Hawks, this could have been a game for the Hawks. We've seen them beat the Golden Knights this year. We've seen them beat some decent teams this year. We almost came close with the Oilers at the beginning of the season. But this could be a game that they were outshot 37-22 this game. That's a big margin. Hawks only won 38% of the faceoffs, and the Hawks didn't. This was a good stat for the Hawks, though. They did not allow any power play goals to the Utah Hockey Club. The Utah Hockey Club had 5 power play opportunities. They scored 0. So that was a good penalty kill.
Very good
for the Hawks this game. But this was floating around Twitter a lot after this game, obviously kind of talking about these players in the NHL trade deadline. One player that is kind of looked at by teams right now is defenseman Seth Jones. And he addressed the media after this game. And clearly, he a few games later, or a few games prior, I believe it was after the Blue Jackets game, he addressed the media and kind of said, I want to be on a competing organization. But clearly after losing to the Utah Hockey Club 2-1, he was very frustrated. And this is what he said to the media. He said, "We're the exact same team right now as we were game 1 of the season. It's pretty evident out there. We haven't made any strides to be better. More simple hockey team, and it shows. And we don't get a lot of wins because of that." That's what Seth Jones basically said addressing the media. So clearly you can tell he's frustrated. He did get a goal this game, so it was good on his end to get a little bit of a goal, but that wasn't enough. Obviously they lost. So, like I said, he spoke out a little bit about him wanting to be on a contending team this season. And we'll see what happens with that. And let's get a little bit with the NHL trade deadline. So these are kind of the same players that we've been talking about floating around. Could they be traded for the Hawks? Could not, because clearly right now it's looking like the Hawks are going on the downtrend. You're looking more of a better pick in the draft instead of, even, being second to last in the league. You're not going to, potentially make a playoff push. But here's some of the players flowing their name around. This is for the third week in a row. I've been kind of, keep you guys updated with this. Forward Ryan Donato has been kind of looked at. Left winger Pat Maroon, defenseman Seth Jones, who we just talked about, and then defenseman Connor Murphy are some of the names being looked at right now. And right now the Hawks are 17, 34, and 7 with 41 points. And for like the 8th week in a row, we're talking about this. This is second to last in the league. We're not last in the league.
Win a game.
Second to last in the league. San Jose Sharks are the last in the league right now. But yeah, kind of going into that and talking about the next 3 games for the Hawks coming up in their schedule. So Hawks next 3 games. We got tonight they're playing. It's a little bit of a later game. If you guys can stay up, drink your coffee. That's what I'm doing right now. Hawks are taking on the Golden Knights in Vegas. It's going to be a tough matchup for them. Vegas has always been a decent team. And then they're facing off March 1st this Saturday against the Anaheim Ducks in Anaheim in California. And then next Monday, they finally get to come back home after this West Coast trip to play the LA Canes at the United Center. So Golden Knights, Ducks, Canes are going to be the next 3 games for the Hawks. We'll see what happens with those games. That's kind of what we've been saying with the Bulls and the Hawks. We'll see what happens.
Both teams are very, very similar positions right now. Only the Bulls can't seem to get worse. Even if we lose games, we can't seem to get worse. But we'll see exactly how those changes by both.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it we got for the Hawks for you guys. Obviously we discussed those 3 games. We discussed those 3 Bulls games as well. That's kind of it we got with the UC chat. Next week, we'll be talking a little bit about those games within this week. We'll break down all those stats with you guys with that next UC chat next week. But let's talk a little bit about some other Chicago sports news with you. So as we said before, last week, baseball has returned. Baseball is back and spring training is back. The Cubs are 6-0 to start spring training in 2025. That is awesome, man. That the Cubs have
That's
been
big.
pretty cool. I'm gonna go check the score of the game right now. The Cubs are winning 4-2 right now against the Angels in the end of the 8th inning. So we could be sniffing at the 7th win in a row, man, to start the spring training. Could be. We'll see what happens with that.
Mhm.
But the Cubs today, they announced that second baseman Nico Horner will not travel to Japan for the opening season series in Tokyo against the Dodgers. Reason why for that, Nico Horner underwent flexor tendon surgery in his right forearm on October 11th. And while his rehab has progressed, he remains limited in spring training, and he will not travel to Japan to start the season for the Cubs. It's just 2 games.
Yeah.
They expect him to come back in that opening homestand against the Padres at Wrigley Field. And now a little bit on the other side, in the south side, Chicago White Sox are 0-5 to start the 2025 spring training this
Not
season.
surprised. Not surprised.
Yeah. So 6-0, 0-5. That's what we're looking at right now so far with the spring training with the Cubs and the White Sox. And now that's pretty much all we have for other Chicago sports news for you. No other really big trades or anything. Obviously, trade deadline's done for the NBA. Nothing happened with the NHL with the Hawks. That's kind of all we got with other sports news with you. But to end off this podcast for you today,
the fun part.
The fun part,
I must say.
The Chicago sports fun facts for you today. Chicago sports fun facts. Dan, start us off with a fun fact.
All right. I got you 3 fun facts here. And then Todd's going to come back with you what happened in Chicago history. So first fun facts here is Monday versus the Sixers. The Chicago Bulls forward, Matas Bazilis, had the highest plus-minus in a game by a rookie in Chicago Bulls history. He had a plus-minus of 40.
Wow.
40 on the court. So that's a pretty impressive stat.
That's a
knowing
cool
that the Bulls,
stat, man. That's awesome.
The Bulls were up by 50 that game. So it's a really impressive stat by the rookie. Next one here is so far with the many losses this season, the Blackhawks have an all-time losing record. Their record currently is 2,906 wins to 2,938 losses and 814 ties. The ties we're not going to look at, but 32 wins. That would be the difference maker in the Blackhawks having an all-time winning record. Unfortunately, there is a losing record because of the last 2 seasons. So that's unfortunate. It's a tough thing to look at, but it's part of Chicago. It's part of history.
It is.
Chicago White Sox are looking to start the season with the 3rd youngest team in the league.
Oh, wow.
The average of 29.7 years of age. And then the 3rd cheapest roster in the MLB at $59 million. What is the highest paid roster in the league this season, Tyler? I have it written down here.
I'm not living under a rock, man, to say this, but can we talk about the deferred money with this team?
Yeah.
It's the Dodgers, of course, man.
Dodgers.
Number one, $321 million compared to $59 million for the White Sox. Money can go a long way, and especially with you especially winning, a World Series and making the playoffs, man. Really can.
That is 5.4 times as much money.
Wow.
That's wild.
Now, to end off Chicago sports fun fact for you guys, I like to give you guys what happened today on Chicago sports history. And today, we're going to look on the hockey side. We're going to look at the Chicago Blackhawks. February 27th, 2009, on today in 2009, Chicago Blackhawks captain Jonathan Toews records his first career hat trick. And because of this, fans threw their giveaway Blackhawks hats onto the ice twice as Toews' first attempt at the 3rd goal was disallowed. Everybody throws their hats on. They say, "Oh, sorry, not a goal." Pick the hats back up. And then they threw their hats back on once he scored again.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny.
That's cool, man. That's cool. There's got to be a video of it out there somewhere.
Yeah,
I'd like to see that.
That's, can you imagine, finding out it's disallowed and then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
Well,
someone's going to clean that shit up.
I threw my hat on the ice already. I don't have another.
Yeah.
Do people just have 2 hats on them? How are there more hats?
Apparently, dude.
I
start
guess
throwing
so.
Underwear.
Start throwing with something else. Your sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Throw
that's a pretty interesting stat, though.
Throw your beer. Throw your nachos.
2009, man. 14 years ago.
Wow. 14 years.
No, more. Sorry. 16 years ago. Jeez.
But yeah, that is going to do it today for D&T in the 773 on this episode, February 27th, 2025 for you. We talked a little bit about the Bears, obviously Trey Smith, franchise tagged by the Chiefs. Bears are going to look elsewhere in the guard position, as well as a little bit about, flowing around with Ben Johnson and everything like that. Coming up around the corner, it's going to be free agency for the NFL. So we'll get you guys, rolling with that in the next few weeks. We did this week's edition of the UC Chat, Bulls and Hawks, and within the last few weeks. But yeah, that's pretty much going to end it today. Dan, before we end off, is there anything you want to say to the viewers, Peter C, and everybody else out there?
Get out watching that game tonight for the Blackhawks. They play tonight, and then maybe Friday night basketball would be interesting for me, especially if Bulls Polish Heritage Night. So I might be in contact to see if that's something I end up going to do.
I need to see some videos of you singing in the 300 level or wherever.
Oh yeah, you might.
That'd be fun. What I'm going to leave you guys with is, maybe catch that Blackhawks game tonight or see what happens. I kind of make a shirt that says "We'll see what happens" because I feel like that's a Chicago quote with some of these teams. But to end you guys off, I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. Obviously we did it on Thursday today. Tomorrow is Friday. I am working during the day, so that's why we did it today instead. We'll let you guys know when we're going to get to it next week with the D&T and the 773. Hope you guys enjoy your weekend. It's starting to get nicer outside.
It's sunny. It's sunny.
I was
out
outside for a little bit, just kind of seeing how, cold or whatever. It's not that cold out. Just a little windy today.
Yeah, put your hoodies on, put your sweater on, and that's it.
Springtime is around the corner.
Hey, go throw that
baseball's around the corner too.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
But thank you guys so much. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your weekend. And as always, bear down, UC Bulls, and enjoy your day. Thanks guys. Appreciate it. No flickering this time.
No flickering. You're right.
It had to be the HDMI cable.
Yeah.